When it comes to assembling wedding invitations, I'm going to start with a clean surface and also clean hands. One thing you might not think about is not drinking wine when you're putting your invitations together, as it can make the envelope adhesive not stick, which is the opposite of what we want. Next, you'll put out all of your pieces. I like to start with the envelopes, and I'm going to keep these in a couple different stacks. So this one is international addresses, and this is local addresses. You might be able to tell the theme I was going with for these fake addresses, but I like to do this in the way that's going to be easiest for my client to put together. And also, if there's anything unique I need to do, such as for the international ones, I don't put RSVP postage on these. So I like to keep them separate so that I can remember that. When it comes to assembly, the easiest thing you can do to protect yourself from mistakes is take out all of the brain power. So I no longer have to look and see which ones are international or not. I have already separated that out, removed that decision-making power from my brain. And that means I'm not likely to accidentally miss one or screw up in some way. How gorgeous. I love this back pattern. And these colors are amazing. Last piece, I'll save it as a big reveal, are envelope liners. How beautiful. So put any pieces that go together. For instance, if there was an RSVP envelope, which there's not on this particular one, we would put it over here with the RSVP cards. We'll put the envelope liners with the envelopes. Is there a specific order that you need to assemble your invitations? Not necessarily. This piece is a little bit bigger and only a few people are getting it. So I would typically put it in the back. I'm typically going to put things in size order. And when it goes in the envelope, it's going to kind of smush down a tiny bit. So this is about what you would get if you put them in this order. You could also put the brown on the top. I kind of like, and you'll see when we get in the envelope, I kind of like having the meet us in the mountains be the first thing that greets you. So that's the thing that I'm going to pay attention to, is what's the first thing that greets me when I come out of the envelope. You can also put all your inserts in the back. You might want to use a belly band or string or something if you're going to put these in the back. And typically you would put them face out so that when they turn it over, they can see. And I kind of love that with all of this pattern. So I might go with that option. But in general, I will have discussed this with my client and provided on their proof an option that shows how it's going to come out of the envelope. If you have a really, really small insert card that might get lost in the envelope, then I would recommend for sure putting it inside a wrap, or sometimes I've done like a little business card size attached to a ribbon. So it's actually attached to the invite. So just kind of keep that in mind. You don't want anything to get lost in the envelope, but these are all big enough that I don't worry about that happening. Now we have about 10 people who are going to the rehearsal dinner. So I might separate this stack for domestic addresses even further into people who are going to the rehearsal dinner or not. However, it's not going to be a big deal for me to search these and put these in at the end, because I'm going to keep all of my envelopes in the exact order of the list that was sent from the very beginning. So anytime I use the envelopes, I am going to flip them in this exact order so that they'll be in this exact order, or I'm going to use them face up in this exact order so that they end up in the same order but reverse, and that's okay. So every time I'm starting over with these envelopes, I'm either starting at the top or the bottom of the list. And this list usually matches what they send me. It could be alphabetical It could be something totally different. That's going to make it really easy to find these 10 rehearsal dinner invites and put them in at the end. So I'll put these over to the side because I'm not going to assemble all of those right now. So I like to start from the outside in. You don't necessarily have to start from the outside in. You could start from the inside out. What that would look like would be stacking up all of the pieces that everyone is getting and then just continuing to stack, basically creating a stack of stacks, if that makes sense. I would alternate the direction they're facing. But to me, it's a little easier to, when I am stacking everything up, go ahead and put it in the envelopes. And in order for me to do that, I have to have the envelopes complete. So the first thing I'll do is print the return addresses. These are obviously fake, so I didn't actually do that. And then I'll do calligraphy or printed main addresses. The second thing that I'm going to do is our envelope liners. And the way that you do one envelope liner is by simply opening up the envelope, putting the envelope liner in, organizing it, creasing that liner, gluing this part, and then your envelope is attached. But we're going to try and break that down into more repeatable steps because, as I mentioned, the best way to prevent making mistakes is to habitualize these processes and make them kind of rote memorization things that you are repeating. This is 110 quantity, so you're repeating these things 110 quantity instead of having to remember every step of the process 110 different times. So for envelope liners, that starts by just opening all the envelopes. And again, we're keeping these in the exact same order. So it's always going to go Florence, Bride, Jess, Carter, or vice versa, Carter, Jess, Bride, Florence. So open all these envelopes and keep them in order. And we'll do the same for our 3 international ones. This may not seem like it's saving us so much time when we only have 8 total out here, but I promise that when you have like 110, this is going to save you so much time. Now we're going to put our envelopes in here. And again, we're keeping this stack in order. We're just reversing the order. We're not getting out of order ever. That's when you start finding issues. I'll put this one on the top. So again, Carter, Jess, Bride, Florence, and now we have Travis at the other end. There are a lot of tools you can use to glue these liners in. I have some other videos on attaching them. Specifically, I'm going to use my ATG gun. You can see it's well worn and I will die on the hill of the ATG gun. I'm also going to get a few extra rolls just in case I need them. I know that I would never need more than at least 1 more roll for this job, but you always want to have extra when you get into assembly. The worst thing is when you have like 10 left to do and you want to disengage from your entire comfy position just to get a few more rolls of tape. So now that we've broken this down into as small steps as possible, this part is the hardest of those steps, but that is okay. And now all we have to do is just glue these in. And it's really important to keep these in order, as I mentioned, and also have something that's distracting you in the background. I make a lot of mistakes with the way my brain works if I don't have anything in the background distracting me. So right now it's talking to you guys, but it also could be like Grey's Anatomy is a very common one for me. If you like podcasts or, you know, Taylor Swift's new album, etc. So this is one of my favorite parts about the job is that there's a good mix of using your brain power. And then you have tasks like this where you're using your hands. You have to spend time doing these things, but you're not necessarily using too much of your brain power, which is kind of nice and allows me to catch up on all the shows that my husband doesn't like to watch with me. And I keep mentioning that you want to make these things kind of habitual. So you want to break it down into all these steps because there's more stopping points. For instance, there's a stopping point after I opened all the envelopes. There was a stopping point after I put them into the envelopes. And there's going to be a stopping point after I glue them on here. So this gives you time for breaks, to check in on other things you need to be doing, walk your dogs, go to the bathroom 100 times if you're 7 months pregnant like I am, etc. But you know you're not going to make any mistakes because this step of the process is only focusing on doing one thing. You're not trying to put the whole envelope liner in and assemble the entire suite with all the different cards for all the different people all at the same time. You're just focusing on doing one thing, which is gluing these liners. And throughout, again, we were keeping this in order. So we have Travis, Florence, Bride, Jess, Carter. Same order that we've had the entire time, even though it's flipped backwards and forwards a few times. Now this is where we can bring our stacks back out and actually start assembling because we have the envelopes ready to go. You're going to put these in the order that you need them and the order that you grab them. I also like to rotate them to face the direction that I'll be grabbing them as well. So I'll be grabbing these facing this way. These two are facing the same direction. This envelope is in the direction that I will need to grab it as well. And you don't necessarily want to grab like left to right all the time because you kind of have two hands. So you want to make it easy on yourself to go back and forth a little bit. So you kind of want to work like inside out, if that makes sense. We are just going to work left to right when I put this together. But then, okay, I'm seeing that I need to move these envelopes over to the other side. Great. And put them kind of in front of me so that when I grab, let's again practice that grabbing. My left-handedness makes this interesting. There we go. That's going to be a perfect grab. So now I'm going to grab from here, put these in here, scooch them a little bit down with my left hand. And what I really want is that meet us in the mountains to show. This is going to shift a little bit in mailing, but I'll do the best I can. And now I'll crease that envelope and I'm going to flip it over and put it right here. But you're making sure you're doing the same thing with all of the different pieces. So crease it, flip it, put it over here. Again, we're staying in that exact same order so that if we need to go back and check something, we absolutely can. We might have had to do some additional preparation. For instance, if we were using a belly band or if we had RSVP envelopes, we would have had to add postage to those. There's a lot of other things we could have done, numbering the backs of RSVPs, a lot of options. This was a pretty easy one, but in general, if you are doing any of that, you just do that before you start this part. So if we needed to number the backs of the RSVPs, we would make sure to number them and have them directly in order. And we would also make sure that our stack of envelopes was starting in the same order as these were as well. And then we would just check every 2 or 3 envelopes to make sure, oh, this is number 6. It's supposed to go to Travis Kelsey. Perfect. We're on the right track. And you can check every 2 or 3. And as long as you stay on track with every 2 or 3, then you can pretty much guarantee that you haven't missed any. So now we have all of our domestic invitations done in a stack in that exact same order. And if we need to go back through and see if any of these people are invited to the rehearsal dinner, as we go through, it will be really easy for us to tell because on our spreadsheet, say, it's like, oh, row number 4 for Jess and Dave Kress are invited to the rehearsal dinner. It's just really easy for me to go right here and plop this invitation into, well, we were, of course, are going to put it in the back, into that envelope and then keep that order the same. This will make it really easy for your clients in case they put these in this order for a certain reason, or if they have any questions while they're assembling, it will match their order. And we also have our few international addresses here, and we would do the exact same thing with them, but we'd have them in a different stack because the client is going to have to do something different with those and put different postage on them in comparison to the domestic addresses. So I hope this gave you an idea of how to assemble wedding invitations. I have a full assembly guide that I'll link in the description of this video that talks about things like belly bands, envelope liners, vellum wraps, tassels, just all kinds of unique assembly steps, as well as all the tools that I use for those things, how much I charge for those things, etc. So anything that's a little bit more advanced than this particular set, you're going to find in that wedding invitation assembly guide. Let me know what questions you have, and I can't wait to see the invitations that you put together.